Intentionally or not, President Trump foreshadowed how Saudi Arabia reportedly plans on explaining the apparent death of Jamal Khashoggi.
It sounded to me like maybe these could have been rogue killers. Who knows?
According to American media outlets, the Saudis will admit Khashoggi was killed, but will say he died in an interrogation gone wrong, and that Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman ordered his questioning but not his killing, a murder likely to be blamed on an intelligence officer going against official orders. President Trump may have heard the same narrative from King Salman during a phone call this morning.
I can only tell you that his denial to me is just one very, relatively fast phone call, probably lasted 20 minutes. His denial to me could not have been stronger, that he had no knowledge.
But still no explanation for why that team of Saudi officials arrived, reportedly carrying a bone saw, one of many reasons others are more skeptical.
Let's remember, this is the same King Salman who told me right after 9/11 that the 9/11 attacks were an Israeli plot, and he said that firmly. Did I believe that? Of course not.
President Trump is doing a delicate dance. Though he previously threatened tough action, he's also eager not to undermine the Saudi relationship and arms deals worth billions. Asked whether he canceled them in the wake of Khashoggi's disappearance, the president was non-committal.
So would you cut that off?
Well, I tell you what I don't want to do. Boeing, Lockheed, Raytheon, all these, I don't want to hurt jobs.
Meanwhile, Turkish and Saudi investigators went inside the consulate today, a seemingly futile effort nearly 2 weeks after Khashoggi disappeared, especially since a cleaning crew was seen going in a few hours earlier. Ellen Morrow, CBC News, Washington.
Jamal Khashoggi's family has released a statement tonight calling for a free and open investigation into his disappearance, saying in part, "We are sadly and anxiously following the conflicting news regarding the fate of our father. The strong moral and legal responsibility which our father instilled in us obliges us to call for an independent and impartial international commission to inquire into the circumstances of his death." So how might the United States punish the Saudis, and then how might the Saudis retaliate? Well, the truth is, their interests are so intertwined it may never get that far. The U.S. may not need Saudi crude like it used to, but the economic and security relationship remains massively important to both countries. Saudi regional power is basically built on high-tech U.S. weapons, and without those, the Saudis would be hard-pressed to even defend themselves, let alone play the role of regional policemen, protecting American interests and counterbalancing rival powers like Iran. It's true, the Saudis have only spent about $14 billion of Trump's $110 billion arms deal so far, but don't expect the U.S. to let this one go. The State Department said it could be worth as much as $350 billion over 10 years. It said that back when the deal was signed. All things considered, neither side has much leverage over the other. The United States isn't the only country which benefits from Saudi Arabia's very deep pockets. Canada's former Conservative government brokered a highly lucrative and controversial deal to sell light armored vehicles to the kingdom, $15 billion worth of them. So while Canada has called for a full investigation into the Khashoggi affair, the Trudeau government is not backing away from that deal.
It's important for countries when they sign on to agreements to stay in those agreements. So we are sticking by agreements that were made before we entered into government. Having said that, we believe in a tough arms export regime, and that is the approach we're taking going forward.
Canada's former ambassador to the kingdom isn't convinced that pulling out of an arms deal would have the desired effect.
I heard a lot of talk this weekend that, this is the time to pull the plug on the LAV deal, for example. I'm not sure where that gets us. Okay, we lose a few thousand Canadian jobs. We undercut our reputation as a reliable supplier. But what does that do in terms of shaping or curbing Saudi policy? Nothing. And all of the countries are dealing with the same dilemma. All this talk about sanctions. You're not going to be able to isolate Saudi Arabia. They're just too important a country.
Dennis Horak knows just how tricky it can be to deal with the Saudis. He was expelled from the country in August after the Canadian government tweeted its concerns over human rights in Saudi Arabia.